All right, the other obvious case that we meet so much of is the relationship between wife and husband. And many, many times, I, like most other ministers, deal with wives who feel that their husband has betrayed them. What are you going to do about it? Now, when you are betrayed by a person, and it may be a wife betrayed by a husband, or it may be various other things, the natural reaction is something like this. You say, I'll turn away. I'll never open myself up again. No one will ever get another chance to hurt me like that. That's a very wrong reaction. I've learned in deliverance there's a demon called indifference. And that's the reaction of somebody who's been hurt just once too often. And indifference says, all right, I'll go through life, but I'll never let anybody come near enough to me to hurt me again like that. I'll always keep a wall between me and other people. You know who suffers? You do. You become a shriveled, incomplete personality. You become like a tree with one main limb lopped off. You can't afford it. What are you going to have to do? It's easy to tell you, it's not so easy to do it. First of all, you're going to have to forgive that person. Now, that's not too difficult. I remember once talking to a lady who had come for deliverance, and she said, I said to her, you're going to have to forgive your husband. She said, after he's ruined 15 years of my life and then run off with another woman? And I said, well, do you want him to ruin the rest of your life? If so, just keep resenting him, because it'll do it. Remember, it isn't the one who resents that suffers, who's resented that suffers most. It's the one who resents. As somebody said about the man with the ulcer, it isn't what the man's eating, it's what's eating the man. Well, you can forgive. You can forgive. When the Holy Spirit comes to your help, you can forgive, if you will. But friends, it's got to go further. You've got to trust your husband. Now, you may not like me, and I may be wrong. Though I like to quote Bob Mumford when he said, how can I help it if I'm right? I always quote him at that point because it makes me sound humble. But my personal conclusion is, as of today, and not excluding the wonderful state of Georgia, the majority of American women do not trust American men. And I think that's one of the deep, basic problems of this nation. Now, I could talk to many of you, and you could give me 15 good reasons why American males are not to be trusted. And probably I wouldn't disagree with a single reason. But nevertheless, if you want a full, complete life, you're going to have to trust your husband. I'll tell you this. Many of the wives here tonight are not really satisfied with their husband. You don't have to put your hand up. Some of you are not satisfied with them as husbands, period. They don't do the right thing, they don't love you, they don't bring you flowers on your birthday, they forget your anniversary, and a lot more intimate things than that. But others of you are not satisfied with your husband's spirituality. That's probably the condition of the majority of spirit-baptized women in this room here tonight. Because I've met multitudes of you. I mean, I've been meeting you for 12 years. I almost know what you're going to say. And you know what always tickles me with American couples is, along comes the woman with the husband in tow, and he says, "Please, Mr. Prince, this is my husband, he's got so-and-so." And I say, "Doesn't the man speak? Do you have to interpret for him?" Well, I mean, that must have happened to me a dozen times. So, what I want to say is this, and I'm coming near the end of this. I think I can say God showed me about 2 or 3 weeks ago that most men will never be what they could be or should be if their wives don't trust them. The mistrust of a wife is such a tremendous negative pressure that 90% of men will never rise above it. Now, there are a few giants like John Wesley who rose above the fact that his wife even dragged him around the house by his hair. But the average man is not a John Wesley. And what I'm saying to you ladies is this: if you ever want your husband to be what you're dreaming he should be and praying he should be, there's one more thing you've got to do: trust him. Oh, I've said this to a few ladies. They said, "You don't know my husband." No, I don't. But I do know God's condition. I believe this is the great revolution that's coming. You can see the other side of it. It's women's lib. And women's lib, in my opinion, and I'm no sociologist, is the expression of frustrated womanhood who can't find men to trust. And in a way I sympathize with them. But I don't believe it's the divine solution. I believe you've got to do something about it. Listen, I want to give you 2 examples from the writings of Paul. I think there's a grace to trust people. I was talking to a lady the other day, or I was preaching on this the other day, and a lady came up to me at the end and I could see she was bursting. She said, "Mr. Prince, doesn't a man have to earn confidence?" Well, I'm not going to argue with that. But I think sometimes you've got to give it on credit. You're willing to do everything else on credit. Why not that? I really do. Now, I want you to just read 2 passages from 2 Corinthians, and I've really come to the end of what I'm going to say. You've all doubtless read 1 Corinthians. You're aware that there were a lot of problems in the Corinthian church. There was a man who had his father's wife. There was drunkenness at the Lord's table. There was disorder. There was faction. There was jealousy. It was not a model church. And yet in his 2nd epistle, Paul says this. I just want to read these 2 passages. 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 3. Second Corinthians 2:3. "I wrote this same unto you, lest, when I came, I should have sorrow from them of whom I ought to rejoice, having confidence in you all, that my joy is the joy of you all." Isn't that an amazing statement? Could you have said that? Having confidence in you all. Who gave him that confidence? The Lord. What made him able to help those people? His confidence in them. If you don't have confidence in someone, I don't think you can ever help them. It's a necessary requisite for being a blessing. Chapter 7, verse 16. The last verse of chapter 7. "I rejoice therefore that I have confidence in you in all things." Could you believe that? He could have given 15 good reasons to have no confidence in the Corinthian church, but he didn't. Friend, the only thing that's going to lift people is trusting. Parents, you're going to have to trust your children. Wives, you're going to have to trust your husband. Not with reservation, but just open yourself up and expose yourself. And if you're wounded, let love flow out of the wound. I really believe that this is the solution to the problems of charismatic wives. Because basically the majority of them are not satisfied with the spirituality of their husband. The more dissatisfied they are, the more they hold their husbands down. It takes a real giant of a man to rise above his wife's mistrust. Most men will not do it. All right? That's all I have to say.